Thank you very much for the introduction. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing today? How's the day been so far? Yeah, very good. Any aha moments today? Any specific aha moments? The content? No? Yes? Maybe? Okay, fair enough. So, I'm here representing Marita, who unfortunately, due to a urgent engagement, she was unable to make it. So I'm here representing Marita in the context of Innovate, SAP, and the Training Development Institute. So let's start by asking the question, does anybody remember Kodak? Yes, okay. What comes to mind when you remember Kodak? Film photography. Hold on just a sec. Film photography, yes. There we go. What else? Holidays. Yes. The cultural significance of that brand in the 80s, yes? The ubiquitous Kodak moment. Anything else? Sorry? Yes, failure to adapt. So one of the things about Kodak, and we use the story of Kodak as a kind of a starting off point, is because actually it's one of these tragedies of the 80s, actually. So Kodak filed for bankruptcy protection in January of 2012, right? They declared themselves bankrupt. And it's quite a tragedy because at the height of their success, Kodak was really this giant of a brand, right? So at the height of their success, they represented around 50% of the global market, 50% of the global market, and 80% of the American market, right? And this is based on the fact that it was this photographic film industry, right? Now, the bigger tragedy that really runs deeper is that Kodak invented the technology that caused its own demise. Do we know this? Is this news to us, or is this kind of like something that we're aware of? Okay, so in 1975, this really cool Kodak engineer, Stephen J. Sasson, he actually invented the first digital camera. He was into R&D and stuff, and he invented this amazing thing. And the prototype, I think this is taxonomy that we're all aware of, was about the size of a toaster, right? And the engineers loved it. They're like, man, this is amazing. This is awesome. They really loved it. But what did management tell them? Yeah, management was like, that's really cute. Don't show it to anyone. Don't show it to anyone. Why do you think management said that? What was their fear? Yeah, so it's this concept of one, and it's a very powerful lesson, yeah? One, we don't necessarily need to wait for somebody outside of our own company to disrupt us. So they're sitting there all smug and happy, number one position. So they're like, hey, we're market leaders. We don't need to do anything to our business model, right? We're happy as we are. But two, they didn't have the vision to realize the impact that digital would have. And three, this whole idea of cannibalization. Film is photography, our market is film. What the hell? You know? So they didn't have the foresight, they didn't have the courage, they didn't have the vision to move forward and actually, I would say, disrupt themselves. So here's our engineer, Stephen J. Sasson, with his prototype of the first digital camera in 1975, right? We like this quote. You better Uber yourself before you get Kodaked. That's true. Any other ideas? I'll throw it out to the audience. So there's another one that we use. I used to work in the media industry, okay? Yeah? So I came up with a similar one to this. You better Netflix yourself before you get blockbusted. Remember Blockbuster Video? Gone. Right? So, the thing about Kodak and a lot of other companies that are still stuck or formatted in 20th century thinking, I guess, or business model or business approach. One direction, one line of business, one business model, one specialization, and it's all around exploitation, right? We're good at film photography, let's just exploit it and keep going that direction, and no, we're not going left, looking right, we're going, khalas, this is where we're going, right? And the truth of the matter is, in the 21st century, so I think we're all aware of the famous acronym that starts with V. Yes, we know it, don't we? VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, right? So this is a reality. This is a reality that we live in. This is a reality that we have to deal with. So this old school way of doing things ain't gonna cut it no more. And we believe that the answer or the solution to dealing with this complexity, ambiguity, volatility, uncertainty is innovation, right? Innovation. So let me ask a question. When we were having this discussion outside, what's innovation? Thinking outside the box. What else? Let's get some answers. What else? Challenging the norms. Okay. What else? New ideas. Creating something that was not there. Very good. Anything else? We get asked this question a lot, yeah? And we were trying to find this definition that kind of sits well with us, but also, you know, serves our customers, obviously, yeah? So I think the idea behind innovation really for us is this concept of creating value. Like really, really creating value, okay? And I'm here representing Winnovate, which is part of SAP. And when we talk about creating value, it might be something like, okay, we're going to create, this new nanotechnology that, inshallah, will cure some terminal disease. Or we might, design the next, manned mission to Mars, right? Maybe these are all innovation. But I think one of the things we're starting to realize, which is really interesting, is it's not only about these tangible products and solutions. It's also about process. It's also about innovation culture. It's also about business modeling. It's all of these things together. And what we found is that we can really apply these concepts, methodologies, mindsets of the synthesis of the tools and frameworks that we use to help create value, right? To help create this innovative culture. So, any questions so far? Comments, suggestions? We're all good? So that's just pure iteration, validation, yes? Part of the, okay. So is there a hands-on practical definition/approach for innovation? Well, yes, there is. We like this concept very much. Has anybody seen this before or has been exposed to it before? Raise your hands. Really? That is incredible. Okay, so this model is very powerful because it basically suggests a sweet spot for innovation, right? Now, obviously, core to our innovation is customer centricity, and we'll come back and revisit that, or user-centric design, or human-centered design, whichever term you want to use. It's putting your customer at the core, empathizing with them, understanding pain points, understanding jobs to be done, or in the case of Agile, maybe user stories, yes? And also trying to create value for those customers or for those users. So, customer desirability, user desirability, human desirability. Fantastic? Coupled with that is this concept of feasibility. You already have operational capabilities and technology in your organization. You already have capacity. You already have competency, right? So feasibility is the question of, can it be done? Yeah? So will it create and serve a user and generate value for the user? Can it be done? Can it build on existing competencies, capacities, capabilities? And does the business model work? Is it viable? So it's really interesting when you look at the intersection of some of these circles. So let's try this. If you have something that has desirability and has feasibility but doesn't have viability, what will end up happening to that solution or product? It might stay on the shelves, or it might not make money, or it might get launched in the market and get rejected, or it might completely go haywire or bankrupt. Clear? Okay. If you have something that's desirable and viable but not feasible, what's going to happen? Nothing. It's not going to get done. It's impractical. Can we deliver a Starbucks coffee with drones? Maybe, but it's not probably the best idea, right? And this idea of low adoption. If you've got feasibility and viability, but you ain't got desirability, then it's low adoption, right? So we like to use these three circles as a kind of a concept of real innovation, the sweet spot for innovation, right? So does anybody know of a company or companies that seem to have figured out this formula of just going routinely innovating, routinely generating breakthrough products, routinely generating value, routinely being able to innovate? Sorry? Apple. For sure. Apple is one of those companies, and thank you, we haven't met, but there you go. Steve Jobs. So we use that as an example because at the very core of Apple, if you go back in their history, the way they even invented the Mac in 1984, the way they continually, routinely innovate with their products, with their services, they figured out a way to continually create value that is viable, that is feasible, that is desirable, right? And the thing about, I think for me, these companies is that they figured out that at the very core of it, there are these key aspects. They realize, one, that innovation is difficult. Innovation is hard. Innovation is risky. This is a reality that we all know and we all have come to terms with. It's all good, right? So the first thing is this idea of customer centricity, right? So somebody once told me, I had this long discussion with them, it's like, you think somebody like Steve Jobs actually goes down and empathizes with his users and customers and goes and designs stuff? Of course not. He's a genius. He sits there and creates stuff and then people buy it. No. There's a quote by Steve Jobs that not a lot of people know. He says, you have to be so close to, you have to get so close to your customers that you know what they want before they do. Right? So this genius of his is not really genius. It's just complete and utter empathy and understanding, right? So customer centricity, user-centric design is a very core concept. The second one is this idea of foresight and willingness to fail. Willingness to fail quickly and easily and without too much risk and without too much loss of resources. So one of the key concepts in design thinking, for example, is this idea of building low-fidelity prototypes, right? So I would go in and say, I want to be able to quickly and routinely test and validate my ideas and test and validate my prototypes so I can get that user feedback and I can integrate it into my products, my solutions, and keep risk low. So I would rather trash a $500 prototype 2 weeks into the project than close down a $10 million factory 3 years after opening it, right? And the idea is that innovation is hard, it is risky, but we need to come to terms with the fact that there are specific solutions, specific frameworks, specific methodologies that enable this structured creativity, right? And enable organizations to nudge their culture, empower their people, right? So I'd like to talk a little bit about what we do at Winnovate, because that's really what we do. So at Winnovate, we believe that innovation is this coupling between obviously the deployment of things like technology and capacity and so on, but it's more about the people. It's really more about the people. We see companies who have these amazing visions, you know, that they go forward, and the vision is great because it motivates the people, it motivates the employees. But if you go and actually go out and invest your money and your resources to actually bring that vision to life without routinely testing for desirability, viability, and feasibility, that's kind of foolhardy, right? You might really crash. So you need to build something into your project, into your culture, into your methodology that enables you to routinely test for those three things without all those investments, without all those resources, minimizing risk, right? So at Winnovate, what we do is we coach people around these methodologies and these mindsets and these frameworks that enable innovation, right? And I think one of the key things that we've realized is, you know, businesses know that they need to innovate. Like, it's not rocket science. It's like, of course I need to innovate. But what happens is they might go and they open up an innovation center. Or they might go and hire a chief technology officer or a chief innovation officer. And they're like, they don't know where to start, right? So what we try to do at Winnovate is we try to help these organizations and these companies get a certain structure to their innovation initiatives, but also empower their people and coach their people around these key concepts that we've talked about. How to empathize, how to ideate, how to collaborate, right? How to prototype, how to test, and so on. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So, who here knows about or has experienced design thinking? Okay, very good. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Just, you know, I'm curious to know, what was the experience like for you, sir?
Prototyping, experimenting.
Okay.
So something that wasn't new, but already years ago.
Okay.
It's still difficult to get the mindset into the company that you are there to fail when you prototype and not try to be perfect.
Yes, thank you for that. So IDEO, which is one of the companies that you know that I've actually worked with and studied with, they talk about don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. And they don't mean that in a bad way, but what they're trying to really teach us is it's okay to fail. And it's actually important to fail. So thank you for that. What was it like for you?
Very similar. But in addition to that, it was also having customers coming to offices and have them play with a product, watch them, and analyze the difficulty they were facing based on things we had based on our hypothesis.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Also, consultancy services, how we can change the services into like smaller modular products that can be offered not on a mass service.
Okay, thank you very much. Sir, would you like to share?
Yeah, this is very similar. Interacting with customers' problem spaces, what I like to call it, but seeing them their element and seeing opportunities to solve particular problems.
Yeah, very good. So for me, we like to use this definition, and there are 4 key messages in this definition, and they're all really important. One of them is design thinking is a human-centered. So desirability, right? It's human-centered, right? 2, it's collaborative. If you attend a design thinking workshop or you're part of a design thinking workshop, you will see pop-up teams that are just formed on the spot, and suddenly, quickly, efficiently, effectively, they're working together. It's amazing. I mean, I've seen it again and again and again. I'm really actually very grateful and appreciative of this because it's a testament to the power of this process, this design mindset. It really is. It never fails. Every single time we trust the process and people go through those 5 stages of design thinking, which is empathy. They start off with empathy, the idea of understanding users, doing interviews, observing, actually doing field work, really going down and working with real users to try to get those second thing, which is this idea of insights, right? And this gentleman talked about that phase of exploration. From experience, companies do not spend enough time in that phase. People are really quick to go into solution mode, right? And if you look at it at a very high level, there's a problem space, which is about framing the right question or framing the right challenge. And then there's a solution space, which is about creating these solutions that will enable us to test and validate, right? A lot of people are just, okay, I have the answer. I mean, even yesterday there was a workshop. We just wrote the question and people started to write answers. I'm like, wait, chill. We're still in exploration mode. We're still in search mode. It's okay. People are not used to that, right? So when we go into the empathy phase, from the empathy phase, we go into something called the define phase. And the define phase has a very, very powerful tool, which is the creation of personas. And these personas are archetypical, kind of like fictional characterizations of our users, but they enable us to understand things like pain points, like jobs to be done, like gains, and so on. At that point, we use this concept called how might we. So a how might we question. How is solution-oriented. It's an open-ended question. Might is aspirational. We is collaborative. So if you take one thing from this keynote today, the next time you're doing anything with anyone, frame the question, even on a day-to-day, how might we? How might we work better together? How might we enhance this relationship? How might we become more profitable? It's just a very interesting way to phrase a question, right? When you go out of that framing space, problem space, and then you go into solution space, then you go into something called ideation, which is just a cooler name for brainstorming. I don't like the word brainstorming because it seems quite cathartic and unstructured. Ideation is actually very structured. Very structured. There are specific activations, specific phases within ideation, something called synthesis, right? But all of that is based on this exploration where we have insight, right? So David Kelly, who is the founder of IDEO, he talks about this really amazing insight for me about innovation. And he talks about something called a non-obvious need. Real innovation happens when we figure out that there's a need that's not obvious. And that becomes the fuel for our innovation, right? So from ideation, we move into prototyping, where we create these low-fidelity proof of concept, minimum viable product. We use storyboarding, we use paper products, we use physical prototyping, we use role-playing, we use storytelling. We mix all these things up to be able to demonstrate these ideas, right? And then, obviously, testing, validating, right? Any questions? So, does design thinking work? Yes, it does. It's a proven methodology. It's a proven methodology that continues to create great results. However, just for reference or for your information, it's not, as we like to say, the holy grail of innovation, right? At Winnovate, what we like to do, like I said, to be truthful to the very spirit of innovation, we continually like to synthesize different frameworks and different methodologies into our offerings to help give organizations and give companies this confidence to innovate. So remember, it's not about a technology, and it's not about a specific skill. It really is a culture. It really is a mindset, right? So some of the things that we do kind of like bring into our offering is also the concept of business model innovation. Anybody know BMI? Yes? Yes? Can you share perhaps what you know about business model innovation? Yes?
Yeah, I believe it's a PhD that was went with which I attended last year with Agile.
Okay.
So we had a discussion about this innovation as well.
Okay. Very good. You got the book. The business model navigator. Okay, that's.
Business model innovation is actually it's a wide range of things. You start by the canvas.
Yep.
You
Tools.
And
Yes.
it's all about, but I agree with you, it's all about the culture, and then you see which we would like to embrace more.
Thank you, sir.
And we have a chapter on this
Yes.
in our book that we'll give as a prize at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah? Do I get the prize?
Yeah, you definitely deserve.
God bless you, sir. So, a very interesting thing about business model innovation is the very nature of the tool. I'm going to just talk about the canvas, which was developed by Alexander Osterwalder, who's a Swiss. I think he's quite a smart man. So he was studying he was doing his PhD, and it started off as just doing his PhD on this ontology of business models, right? But what was really interesting is, again, true to the spirit of innovation, he realized that there are specific pain points with users, people who work in industry, people who work in business. These pain points are what actually led to the creation of the canvas. It was a co-creative experience. He actually co-wrote the book with 400 other people. And he'd send them chapters, and they'd send them back, and he'd send them chapters, and he'd send them back, right? But what were the core pain points? So I'm just going to use this as a dialogue because I actually have a little bit more time, so it allows me to be a bit more improvisational, which I like. So let's just take this. Just next to your partner now, just answer this question. What's the business plan? Just take 30 seconds. What's a business plan? Why are you laughing?
Because I just gave this training the past 3 days.
Oh, yeah? Okay. I'm just trying to prove a point, mate. I'm just trying to prove a point. Yeah, there you go. There you go. What's your name? Tim. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna put 100 dirhams on this table that nobody has the same answer. So let's try it. Lit match approach from positive psychology. Imagine you have a match and it's about to burn you. It'll take about 8 to 10 seconds. So maybe start with this lady. What's a business plan?
Setting the company organization goals.
There you go. Setting organizational goals. Okay. What's a business plan? Yeah. What answer did you give?
Setting up the objectives of what we are anticipating to do.
Fair enough.
Something we put in the toilet.
Classic. Classic. And that's just classic. Sir.
Business plan basically setting a target and following some steps.
Okay, so it's a strategic road plan. It's a blueprint for success. It's how to make money. It's management of resources. It's so many things.
And there's never been one that's been proven right.
Yes. So based on this insight, Alex, the guy who wrote the book, Business Model Generation, and he also wrote Value Proposition Design, found, 1, there's a lack of a common language. 2, there's something called priority conflict. So if I'm a CEO, and you're a CRA, and you're a CMO, and you're a CTO, we all want different things. So HR wants to retain talent, and brand management wants to expose the brand, and marketing wants to, and sales, so there's this priority conflict. Difference in professional competencies, difference in personalities, right? So what he managed to do was create a canvas, a visual canvas that enables everybody to speak the same language visually. So on one right side, you've got customer segments, customer relationships, customer channels, value proposition, revenue, activities, resources, partnerships, and costs. And iterating around that is a very, very, very powerful exercise. So that's something that we also bring forth to the table, right? And design thinking can actually be used to solve any challenges around any one of these iterations. So you might come and say, okay, how might we, maximize our relationships in order to generate so and so. You might use design thinking to be able to iterate around these business models. Lean startup, the whole idea of iteration, validation, right? Blue ocean strategy, what are we going to eliminate? What are we going to reduce? What are we going to raise? What are we going to create? Blue ocean strategy, very simple, very powerful. Like, do you know the Cirque du Soleil story? Okay. So I'll just use that again in the blue ocean strategy. When Cirque du Soleil decided to venture into the circus segment, you had Bozo the Clown and the tents and the big circus tents and the animals and the concessions and all that stuff. So they came in and said, okay, what are we going to eliminate? They took out the animals, they took out the concessions, They took out the danger and all that stuff with regards to all the animals and all that stuff. And I think they decided to take out this whole idea of this traveling concept of the circuses, yeah? They said, okay, what are we going to reduce? And they looked at some of the factors of the current circus and they reduced them. What are we going to raise? Production values. Look at Cirque du Soleil. It's on another level, right? Music, franchising. They have licenses with the Beatles. They actually did a show with licensing the music of the Beatles called Love, right? What are we going to create? We're going to create this incredibly branded experience called Cirque du Soleil. Cirque du Soleil now are in a blue ocean. Nobody can compete with them. As opposed to these called red shark-infested waters, where everybody's competing together for the same thing because we're working with the same factors and the same criteria. They're like, hey, stop. We're going to eliminate some things. We're going to reduce some things. We're going to raise some things. We're going to create some things. By doing this, blue ocean. We're in a place by ourselves, right? So I just wanted to share that at Winnovate, we're all about synthesizing these things, right? One thing also, just from my own experience, I'm an ICF accredited coach. So I'm accredited by the International Coaching Federation. I've also studied positive psychology, which is very interesting, systemic coaching, which is very interesting. So I believe that all of these things need to come together to be able to help us nudge and change culture. Because it really is about people. You know, innovation is about people. This is something I found again and again and again. Innovation is about people, right? Creating value for people. So, somebody asks, does this stuff really work? Well, yes. So you got companies like Apple, like Coca-Cola, like Procter & Gamble, like SAP. These companies, they do apply frameworks like design thinking routinely to innovate, and they routinely outperform the S&P by 200%. Questions so far before I continue? Okay, very good. So let's go back. Does anybody know what the top skills? Did you catch it? What are some of the top skills required for success next year, the year after?
Analytical thinking.
Analytical thinking. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Agility.
Decision-making.
Creativity. Decision-making. Okay. Anything else? Listening. Yes, for sure. Active listening. So I'm just going to put the slide up. I'll give you like a minute just to take a look at it. What's really, really fascinating for us is that the methodologies that we apply and the frameworks that we use naturally bring out these top skills in people. Right? Naturally. So, if you think about the idea of complex problem solving, well, the very, very important aspect of our let's say, a design thinking workshop is the ability to converge and diverge. Right? So you're moving from a place of macro divergence to a place of micro convergence. You've got a cluster, a wall full of ideas, and you're asked to look at it after ideation for about 20 or 30 minutes with your team. You're asked to look at it and try to use integration and synthesis to problem solve, to bring together these ideas into one integrated solution, right? Another one is this idea for critical thinking. So we have this exercise we do called dot voting, which is a dotmocracy. Dotmocracy, you know what it is? So a dotmocracy basically forces convergence. How? By going back and saying, okay, you've got 20 ideas or 30 ideas or 40 ideas. Each one of you gets a red dot, a green dot, and a blue dot. Or in this case, a purple dot, a blue dot, a green dot, and a yellow dot. look at these 40 ideas, and you decide which one is the most desirable, which one is the most viable, which one is the most feasible. So by doing that, it forces you to think critically. You're like, okay, I'm going to have to empathize with my user to think which one of these ideas is most desirable. I'm going to have to put myself in the shoes of my COO or CEO or board of directors to decide which one of these ideas is most viable. I'm going to have to imagine what it's like for feasibility, yeah? So the thing about, again, these methodologies, these frameworks, is that they naturally enable these skills, right? Fantastic stuff. So at Winnovate, I imagine that one of the ways that we really create value is that we can apply these methodologies to tailor-make these workshops, engagements, or long-term partnerships and help our partners with this confidence to innovate. So, I like to leave you with this quote, which I really like. Somebody maybe from the audience have volunteered to read it? It's day one forever because day two is death. Okay? What's the significance of that quote in the context of the last 40 minutes? You got to constantly innovate. You got to constantly disrupt yourself. Because if you don't disrupt yourself, somebody else will. And I think one of the things that I found is really, really interesting, and I actually, that's actually the title of the blog that I'm writing right now. I'm publishing this week, actually. And it's basically an outcome of all of the workshops that I've been doing in the past 18 months, because it's been quite an interesting ride. You know, it's been quite busy doing things here, doing things abroad, working with all kinds of clients and partners, ministries, educators, SMEs, corporations, English, Arabic. It's been really interesting. So I sat there, it's like, what's this common theme? And like the common theme is this: we don't know. And you don't know. And it's okay. That is the beauty of it. The beauty of it is it's a co-creative process. We trust the process and we venture into the unknown together. We have these lenses of desirability, viability, and feasibility. We always continually to test and validate and co-create and so on and so forth. But the beauty of the matter is the coaches and the trainers don't know. The board of directors doesn't know. Leadership doesn't know. The users don't know. The developers don't know what the outcome will be. And that's why it's risky, it's hard, it needs courage. But if you keep in mind these key tenets of customer centricity and user-centric design, this willingness and capacity to fail quickly and learn and validate and test, this collaborative approach, right? It is really a collaborative approach. And this idea that we're constantly converging, diverging, looking for insights, doing low-fidelity prototyping, testing, validating, coming back, until we move from a place of, I have no clue, to at least I have some sense of certainty before I make an investment with regards to my resources, my time, my people, my money, my effort, right? So again, thank you again for your time, for your attention, and I'm going to leave my cards here. If you guys want to get in touch with us, I'm more than happy to contribute to your success, and thank you again for your attention. Any questions, comments?
Well, I would like to thank you because I heard that a female will do the lecture, and then they told me it was the last minute. So when you started, I was like, am I in a wrong lecture? So I went out and they said, no, we called someone else for the last minute. So thank you for being effective. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So Marita, who is my boss's boss, actually, she had an urgent engagement, and she asked me to fill in for her. So it's an honor for me to be able to fill in for her. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yes, sir.
sure about the topic of business viability. Yes, from a business perspective, yes. But there will be innovative ideas that have no business idea, business profitability or profit concept behind, and they still will survive or even make it. So I'm a bit
Okay.
from a concept of you want to create a business, yes.
Yes, I completely agree with you. What's your name, sir? Olav, yes. So we had a workshop with the CSR. So they're just all about social impact, and they're creating an entrepreneurship center, and they really don't care about making any money. So when we came to that circle, we asked them the question, what's success for you? Like, how do you define your criteria for success? And their criteria for success was things like social impact and being on a knowledge index and getting, you know, a pat on the back from somebody. So in that context, that's their viability, right? So I do agree with you, but when we speak about it from a theoretical framework, it really is about business models, but not all business models lend their success to bottom line, right? So I agree with you completely, and we take a flexible approach to that, and we ask them, what are your criteria for success? And we plug that into that circle to make sure that that's always addressed.
Okay, all right, thanks.
You're very welcome.
You spoke about collaborating, it's about people. How do you have any special techniques to get people who are rigid and not necessarily afraid of change, but they want to dictate the change and are not receptive to the feedback of others? Any ways to get them on board? Any way to engage them?
So
Are we talking like a boss?
so I'm going to answer this question wearing 3 different hats. The first hat I'm going to wear is the hat of a coach. Okay? If somebody doesn't have the desire to change internally, there's nothing you can do about it. Okay? So I apologize if that's not the answer you want to hear. Okay? The second hat I'm going to wear is the hat of somebody who's actually done these workshops enough times to tell you that even the most rigid find their way into it through the activations, through the exercises, through the scenarios, through the engagement, through using all these different tools like icebreakers and positive psychology, using strengths, and that's good, thank you. This is a design thinking clock, by the way, just so you know. Okay, so in answer to that question, yes, if you bring them into one of those engagements, slowly but surely, they'll find their way. And what we found, I'm sorry to take more of your time, but this is an interesting question. There are 4 key points that I found where people find their aha moment in these workshops we do, right? The first one is when we build personas. When people empathize with the persona, they're like, wow, user-centric design, they get their moment of insight, right? The second one is at the end of ideation. When we do synthesis and they actually see a value proposition that's well articulated, they're like, oh my God, this makes sense, this works. We sat here and we just came up with all these crazy ideas. We clustered them, we organized them, we structured, we synthesized, we assimilate, and now, whoa, we got this value proposition. This works. Aha moment number 2. Aha moment number 3 is when they actually build a tangible prototype. When the conceptual comes to life and they hold it and they touch it and they demonstrate it, they're like, oh my God, this is something that's real, right? So that's aha moment number 3. And number 4 is when they do their final pitches. And they're like, oh my God, this is how far, look how far we've come in 3 hours or 10 days, regardless of the length of the engagement. So answer number 2 is the experience might create the change. And answer number 3 is, I'm not sure. What do you think?
I don't know. I think to some degree it's about understanding the person. I have 0 psychological background, but thus I find that I can influence some people to take certain steps, or not just to match up to my own perception, but also, for example, there's a gentleman in my organization who's extremely intellectual. He's a smart guy, but he thinks his way is the only way.
So this is about what we talked about, which is creating this structured innovation culture. It's about people. So I don't want to give you a solution, but I think this guy can benefit a lot from coaching, right? But he needs to know. He needs to know.
But also those workshops, once you get into the workshop environment, what he's saying is really important, because you will see some laggards that are kind of pulling back. But as as they see things start to materialize, you'll see them kind of jump in and participate. Because it just by its energy, it grabs you.
Okay, I think, thank you very much. If anybody has any other questions, I think we'll take it offline because they must prepare the room for the next speaker. So thank you again for your attention.